Hey everybody, welcome to new fire alarm devices for July of 2017. So the highlight of this month was a bank demolition on July 31st where I actually won the bid to purchase and remove the contents of the fire alarm system. So as you can see, once again, we have a lot of devices laid out here. And there's also several other control panels that I'm going to be featuring in this video that I couldn't fit in the camera frame here. So I certainly encourage you to stay tuned throughout the rest of this video so you can see those and all the other devices that I'm going to be featuring today. So let's get started. I'm sure one of the most noticeable items in the intro frame was all of these Federal Signal vibratone horns that were laid out in the middle. Now the majority of these came from that bank demolition I mentioned, with the exception of this one here on the end. But the interesting thing is that almost none of these are exactly the same. So I'm actually going to break this down individually, and we're going to go ahead and start with the only horn that did not come with the bank demolition devices, this Federal Signal 4050D with a valve strobe. So this is just your standard 4050D Series B4 with the Federal Signal valve strobe. Like I just mentioned, this wasn't related to the bank demolition. This came in a larger group of horns that I bought, and I do have some of them available for sale on eBay. This one was actually not working when I received it, so I've been in the process of repairing this. I've gotten pretty close so far, but it still does sound kind of weird, but hopefully I'll eventually get all the adjustments right, and this will be, once again, a fully functioning horn. It's actually really high-pitched right now. I might post a video of it pretty soon just because of how funny and strange it sounds. The next device looks a whole lot like the one you just saw, and now we're going to go ahead and move on into the stuff that came out of that bank. This is a FCI HP horn with a FSL strobe on it. Essentially just the signal you just saw in the last video, but rebranded by FCI. This was actually the only horn that was branded by FCI in that building, even though it was a larger FCI system. And this, as usual, is just your standard Series B4 horn. This is another vibratone from the bank demolition. Once again, just your standard 4050D Series B4. This came out of the basement of the bank, and it was the only Federal Signal branded B4 horn in the whole building. And what's interesting is that all of these horns are from 1994, which, to be honest, is way later than I thought that these horns were still being installed in buildings, especially the older B4 series horns. So that's it for the B4 series horns. The next few vibratone horns are much different, and you'll see why in just a second. So this horn came from right near the front entrance of the bank, and as you can see, it appears to be a Federal Signal vibratone, which it is, and it has a Federal V1971 strobe on the front with the weird downward slanted design, which really worked well where it was installed because this was pretty high up and it shone the light back down, kind of down by the floor where people would be walking. But if you look at the back of this device, it uses a Faraday mechanism, and I'm sure some of you are familiar with this model of horn. It's a Vibratone Series D1. A while ago, New Age Server Alarm posted a video. It was titled "An Unusual Vibratone," and he explained the relationship between Federal Signal and Faraday that led to this horn's creation. And I'm pretty sure he hit it spot on with the fact that Faraday either manufactured this entire horn for Federal Signal, or they just manufactured the mechanism on the back, but either way, it really is interesting. So here we have the final vibratone horn, and this is my personal favorite device that I pulled from the bank. There was actually two of these, and what's interesting is that this is a Federal Signal Vibratone 4050D Series C2. Now, I know we've seen Series B2, B4, and then the strange Faraday D1 series, but if you look at the back of this horn, rather than using the circuit board models that Faraday put out, this uses just a standard Faraday 6120 series horn like you would find on well, obviously some of the Faraday horns, but same kind of mechanism that was used behind the Simplex 9833, and even the 9838s I think use the same mechanism. And I personally have never seen or heard of the C2 series. If you're interested in one of these, since I did pull 2 out of this building, I do have another one of these listed for sale on eBay. Since it is such a rare horn, it's fairly pricey, but I want to see if I can get anybody interested in it, since it kind of is a one-of-a-kind unit, other than the fact that I have 2 of them. Anyways, moving along, let's go ahead and take a look at the pull stations that came out of the bank. So in the bank, all of the pull stations were FCI model MS2s. There were 5 of them total. I've decided to pull aside 2 of them for my personal collection. The rest of them are for sale on eBay. These are just your standard run-of-the-mill pull stations. I know I have a lot of these that are rebranded by other interesting companies, but I guess it is kind of nice just to have the original for a change. The thing I noticed is that on a couple of these stations that were in the bank, you'll usually find the terminals like this, which these don't work really well for installing on single gang back boxes. So whenever they installed these on some of the pull stations, they actually turned the whole terminal assembly around sideways so you get on a single gang box. And for whatever reason, I had never thought to do that with my devices, but I think with some of my MS2s I'm going to end up turning the terminal blocks like these, because on my system the conduit entries on the pull station box enter in from the side, so this should give a little bit more room for the conduit entry and the lock nut when compared to this design. All of the vibratone horns you saw just moments ago were mounted on the System Sensor MP-SF semi-flush mounting plates. You can see here's the model number here. There was 5 of these that matched up with each of the 5 horns. Just pulled aside the 1 for my collection because I really don't need all 5 of them. So that's it for just the moment with the bank stuff, but later on in this video I'm going to move downstairs where I still have some of the other stuff stored, and we're going to check out the rest of the control units from that bank building, so I encourage you to stay tuned so we can get to those a little bit later. This is a Pyrotronics Pyralarm model number MS51 pull station. As far as I know, these are exactly identical to the MS4 or MFS4, excuse me, series pull stations, but this seems to have been made after they already updated their model number sequencing. This was actually pretty filthy when I got it, but I was surprised how nicely it cleaned up, and really happy with it. Now I have, you know, some more Pyrotronics branded stuff to go along with my Siemens Cerberus Pyrotronics SXL system, which is nice. Next up, we have this EST Genesis chime. This is a model number G1RF-C. If you're wondering why it's still on this mounting plate and still has the end-of-line resistor, that's because this device is actually, was currently installed on my fire alarm system, and so I just popped it off there for this video. I didn't feel like removing everything. It'll just make it easier to put it back up after I'm done filming this. But I really like this. This is probably going to become one of the kind of default devices I use on the system when I'm not filming a system test, especially if I need to do like troubleshooting or anything on it, because it is quiet and pretty nice to listen to in contrast to some of the louder horns that are out there currently. Next up, we have a Simplex model number 4905-9938 Smart Sync control module. This is used to turn 2 regulated 24-volt panel NAC outputs into a Smart Sync control loop for Simplex True Alerts. I don't have a whole lot much to say about this one because I haven't had a chance to test it yet, but eventually you should see some videos out where I'll be using this on some Smart Sync True Alerts in the near future, and I should have some more information to go along with it at that point. So now we're going to get to the more exciting part of the video and take a look at all the control units that I've gotten over the past month. So first of all, we're going to take a look at this little Potter security panel. This is a Potter model ZIP panel. It's a 4-zone security access control panel manufactured sometime during the mid to late 80s. So pop it open here, we can see it's got a tamper switch on the cabinet. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in with my phone here a little bit on the display interface. You can control the buzzer here to set it to activate on all zones or just priority for zone 1. You can also change the relay output to latch on alarm, or you can leave it as non-latching. If you see these switches down here, these are actually how you can enable or disable a zone. And they have these little pieces here that you can put up under the switch and then screw down so that the switches can't be tampered with while the front cover is in the locked position. Overall, I think this panel is, really cool little unit. That's why I bought it. Since this was brand new, I'm probably going to keep this as more of a display piece rather than actually use it on a system. But maybe I'll put out a couple little videos showing the operation of this panel in the near future. So here's the big one for this month. This is a Simplex 4007 ES full color touchscreen fire alarm control panel. Now, I did an entirely separate introductory and explanation video for this panel. So I'm going to go ahead and put a link in the description of this video, and if you're interested, you can go ahead and look at that video and see the complete inside-outside explanations of everything on this control unit. But for now, we're going to go ahead and move on to some of the other devices. So we've gone ahead and moved to a different area because of how big some of this equipment starts getting. And as you can see right here, we have a 4-zone FCI FC-72 fire alarm control panel mounted in the really large 16-zone cabinet. So let's go ahead and take a closer look. So up here on the panel we have the main display area along with the zone areas, which, like I mentioned, only the first 4 are used. This came from the bank demolition, so right here we have the zone for the first floor pull stations, the basement pull stations, then the sprinkler water flow and sprinkler tamper zones. So I'm going to go ahead and pop this unit open. So as you can see, we have the 4 zone modules, and these 2 are mounted on a expansion zone module. Over there we have the main control board with the signaling circuits, and then the main display board over here, which, I mean, that's kind of a funny term to use when there's only the piezo and then 2 LEDs on the main display. And then up above there we have the main transformer and all the power supply information. So this is a 4-zone 2-NAC fire alarm panel. If you have any idea about the FCI 72 series, you know this is a really simple control unit. So haven't completely decided what I'm going to do with this yet, but I'll see if I can find an interesting use for it, and I will certainly post some videos of it in the near future. So we're going to wrap up today's video by taking a look at these 2 Keltron wireless transceiver units. So these are, well, the first unit here, this is simply the 16-volt power supply for the unit over here on the left. But this is a AES Intellinet / Keltron 7750 active network subscriber unit system. Basically, these are kind of like fancy 2-way radios for fire alarm systems. So each of these units kind of forms a network of other devices that will transmit alarm signals along their path until they reach the central station. So for example, if this unit was within direct radio range of the central station, when it went into alarm, it could just send the radio signal directly to the monitoring center. However, if this unit was maybe 2 or 3 other units farther than the central station, and it was no longer in direct radio contact with the monitoring center, it would actually be able to send its signals to another unit, which that unit could send its signals to another unit until finally it reached a unit that was within direct radio contact of the central station, at which point the fire department could receive the alarm. So we're going to zoom in and take a closer look at the interior of this box. So on the interior of the unit you can see all the control boards and components. Over here in this silver looking area, this is the wireless signal encoder. On the top here we have the main control board for the unit, and then down here this is a model 7760 interface module. This actually kind of operates like a standard control panel. It's used to interface with the control panels on these systems. So over here we have just standard zones, and then these are reverse polarity inputs. So for example, let me get the battery cables out of the way here. At the bank, the station was wired into zone 8 here from the NAC output of the panel, so it could sense when the polarity on the NAC would reverse, and at that point cause a alarm within this unit, which would then contact out to the central station. As far as I understand, this unit wasn't within direct radio contact with the station, so this unit would have had to contact other units in the area, at which point they would have dialed out to the central station. One thing I do want to note about this is if you're at all familiar with the way Tyco Simplex Grinnell works with their products, or this company in particular, we did contact Tyco to ensure that this unit was customer owned, which means it would have been owned by the bank. Once the bank walked away from the building and got the contract with the demolition company, it became the property of the demolition company, at which point I purchased it and it became my property. If you're ever doing a job and you see one of these units out here, there's a very good chance that it is owned by Tyco Simplex Grinnell, so you definitely want to check with them to make sure that it is legal for you to take this unit. You don't want to run into any issues because, as I mentioned, these do form kind of a network grid where all of the units rely upon each other to make the connection to the central station, and you take one of these units out of that network, all the other ones have to rework their routing tables in order to make sure there's a proper connection to the central station. Now obviously if one of these just gets knocked out with a bulldozer, that would be unfortunate, but again, you would want to check with Tyco to make sure that this is customer owned and that it is allowable to take that, so I just thought I'd throw in that little disclaimer. So, go ahead and put this back together, and that's about all I have for this video in terms of fire alarm related stuff. So certainly subscribe if you're interested in seeing videos of this equipment in the future, because I'll definitely be putting videos out. Oh, the other thing I should mention, if you get your hands on one of these should be used for display, because the moment you power them up, they're going to start communicating with the radio network again if it's still in range, so you don't want to accidentally dispatch the fire department or monitoring service out to where the building used to be. If you're able to default the programming, which is what I'm going to attempt to do, then you should at least be able to mess around with these. Anyways, go ahead, leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. So, thank you for watching.